everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. I thrifted this pair of dress pants. The fabric is really nice, lightweight, perfect for spring and even into summer, but there are a few problems. They're a little too low on the waist, a little camel toe-ish, and super long, and they have no belt loops. So I think I'm going to be able to solve all those problems fairly easily. So if that sounds good to you, then let's get busy and fix up these pants. So a few pins in the bottom hem, and then we're good to go.
I do want to raise up the pants. They just sit a little low for me, but this fly is really a short fly, so I can't raise it up too much, or really that fly is gonna look funny, and there's no way I'm just gonna replace that fly right now. So I just wanna raise it up maybe an inch if I can. So if I put one leg inside the other, then it becomes kind of clear how I can scoop that crotch a little bit lower so that the whole pant raises up. So I'm gonna have to blend in to the front and then come down, try to get my inch right here at the bottom, kind of all the way along that bottom edge, and then blend back into the back waist. I'll sew on my soap line. The tricky thing is to be able to try this on, right? Because you kind of have to cut away this excess before it's going to sit properly on you. So it's a little bit of a leap of faith here. I'm gonna sew on there, and then I have to cut away the excess before I can really try it on and see the difference. Okay, so now I just need to sew on that wax line, and I want to start as close to the fly as I can, but it needs to be all sitting flat. I just need to make sure I'm not sewing in any little folds or puckers there. So my seam ripper can help me flatten that area out, and then I can sink my needle. Then I just want to keep the rest of it nice and smooth. This seam laying right on top of itself, I can feel that that's in line. And then can you see, like, you want a nice gradual blend back into the original sewing line, no sudden movements. It's important that I get this area worked out before I do the length, because this is going to raise up the pant, and then I don't want the legs to be too short. As I say though, it might be tricky to try it on with that, but what I'm going to do is just open up this seam here. I'm too chicken to cut this at this point, but I can open up that seam, and that'll help that to give way a little bit. So this is just the top of the inseam right at the crotch. So with that able to open up, I'll try that. There's just a little funny shape right there where I didn't do a very smooth blend into the original sewing line. So I'm just going to smooth that out. No big problem. But opening that seam up to be able to try it on really helped a lot. And it is sitting really nicely now. And the pant is sitting higher up, closer to my waist. So that is nice. So now I'm more confident that that's going to work. And so I'm going to trim that down, just leaving like a decent size seam allowance. Okay, and then in here, I think I better replace a back tack right in there, because that looks pretty vulnerable. So I'll be just finishing off the top of both inseams properly with a good strong back tack, and then I'll put that seam back together. Good, so inseams first. And you might notice that this is not my normal machine. It is a Baby Lock, but it's the Jubilant. And this is just a loaner from my classroom, because my Baby Lock is in the shop getting fixed. And since my Baby Lock is getting serviced, I thought I might as well get my serger serviced as well. So I have no machines here of my own. So this one's a loaner, got no serger. So this seam is going to need to be serged. So I think I'm just going to do that in my classroom and show you after that. So now I'm just putting that crotch seam back together at the inseam. My seams laying nice and open and flat. Without a serger, I could go ahead and just zigzag those edges. But you know what? Once you're used to serging, you want to serge it. So I will go ahead and do that in my classroom and show you when that part's done. Because this seam separates at the top, I'll serge the edges separately, at least for a few inches. So that means that I want to take out this little bit of stitching here that's preventing this one from laying open and flat. And since the whole pant is sitting up higher now, I had to adjust the amount that I'm shortening them by. There's quite a deep hem in here already. It's 1 5/8 deep. I usually hem with 1.25 inches. And so what I'm debating is, this is the area that I want to get my belt loops out of. And I want the belt loops to be cut this way on the stripe, not this way. So that means I think I'm going to have to undo that hem. I can't just cut off the hem. I have to undo it so that I'm not losing more fabric than I need to. So I want my pants to be 2 1/4 inches or 5.5 centimeters shorter than these ones. And I just want 1.25 inch hem or 3 centimeters. So that's where I'm going to be cutting. I think I'd want to cut the belt loop piece 3 inches or 7 centimeters, which means I'd be losing a little bit of length. I think it's worth it. So I would be cutting 3 inches off, but the hem would be, maybe I can do just a 1 inch hem. Okay, so I'm going to fold these up at 4 inches and try that on and see. I just tried them on, absolutely fine. Having trimmed off the seam allowance, it's sitting really, really nicely in that whole crotch seam. It's sitting up nice. I'm really happy with everything. And now I think I can also have belt loops. So I'm going to be just cutting off 3 inches. So with both legs nicely lined up with each other, and that bottom edge definitely lined up, I'll put the 3 line of my ruler right on top of that line. Okay, so we'll come back to the hem. Normally when you cut belt loops, you cut one long strip and make one long belt loop, and then you cut it into 5 sections or so. But I'm going to be making mine this way on my stripe, so it's going to be sort of a one at a time kind of deal. And I like a 2-inch piece for a belt loop. Okay, so let's take all these little pieces to the iron. Okay, so with these little pieces now, I just want to fold in half, wrong sides together. And then open them up and bring one edge to that center line. And they kind of get too hot to handle, so that's why I'm jumping from one to the other. And then the other edge into the center. And then I don't think I have to do the final press. I think I can just do it at the machine. Is just fold these in half and sew close to that folded edge and to the other edge, just so it looks balanced. So I'll chain them all together and then I'll come back on the opposite edge. So now just turning and coming down the other side. Alrighty, so now that kind of keeps you consistent. I did miss an edge right there, didn't I? Darn it. Okay, so the rest looks fine. I'll just catch that edge. And you know what? I don't even think I need to do any stitch removal there. I think I can just do a tiny back tack. And no one's the wiser. So now I can cut my belt loops apart and cut off if the edge is super fuzzy. I'll remove some of that fuzz. My top thread matches a little bit better than my bobbin thread. So if one side looks better than the other side, for whatever reason, then you want to put that side down. And I just kind of measured on myself. I know I want my 2 front belt loops to be about 7 inches apart. This is my center front. I need it to be about 3.5 inches from that center. Basically, you're picking a spot in that center panel. So for me, it's about halfway between the pocket and the edge. So let's call it there. And then I want to put a pin exactly in the same spot on the other side. So those two are both like spanning the center front. And then there will be one right at the center back. And then one halfway in between. So you know what I do? Honestly, I just fold. I'm just bringing my two pins together here. And then I just find the center spot. There we are. And then same for the other side. Those two line up. So I want another one in line with this. That's it. So I'm going to start with these going down, good side down. So I just want to be able to do a little back tack straight across this. And that's why it's good side is down, because it's going to be coming up like that. So at each of my spots, place my little thing. And I'm just placing it like, what, about 3/16 of an inch or 4 millimeters above that waist seam. So they'll each get a little back tack across, and then this is going to come up. My little serged edge will fold under, and then a little back tack at the top here. That's going to be perfect. Yay! So I want to do this back tack kind of right in line with that waistband seam. Skip right across to the next one. Trimming all my threads inside and out. So now for the second side, it's easy to let the presser foot push this along, and then they end up crooked. I just need to make sure that I get these straight. So I'm just tucking under the bare minimum at the top end. It is a little thick, but I think it's going to be fine. It's wanting to push that along, so I'm going to just lift up, give a nudge. There we go. So if I start in the middle of that belt loop, I might get less pushback like that. Yes, I did. Okay, and then I just have to trim all those threads. I think the belt loops are great. I think they look really, really nice. That it just finishes it off. I could do another back tack at the bottom edge here, but I think if I just press it flat, that is just going to be fine. Okay, so the belt loops are looking good. I'm really happy with that. And then I just noticed one more thing, and that is that these back pockets are sewn shut, but it is a real pocket. There's a pocket bag. It's not really deep. It's not really useful, but I just want to point out that you can undo that stitching that closes up so many of our pockets. You can leave it closed too. If you know you're never going to use it, it will sort of stay put better if it's closed up. But if you think you want it open, you can just take out that stitching, and then you have real pockets. I think I might just leave it halfway closed because I can picture that starting to be baggy and saggy there, so might as well leave it. But just so you know, you can open up pockets to have real pockets if there's a pocket bag inside. Okay, so I just dug out a little bit of this seam binding, and look at that price, 29 cents. So this is really old, but you know what? You can buy this stuff even at thrift stores now. It's really easy to come across it in a thrift store because nobody really uses it anymore, but it's pretty handy sometimes. So look how much this fabric frays. Like, that has not been cut for very long, and it's kind of just like exploding in this fray. And then my seam's coming apart a bit there. So maybe I better just replace my little back tacks there. I'm going to be sewing this hem tape all the way around, but because it's just fraying such a crazy amount, I think I'm going to use a zigzag stitch to sew it on, just so I get a bit more coverage.
So I just want to overlap my edge a little bit, get all the threads out from the seam and go. So you might have noticed that I started a little bit before the seam, and I'm going to cut it off a little bit after the seam and tuck my edge under. Good. So that I've got that little folded edge to end with. That'll be fine. So I'll do that to both pant legs, and then you know what? I do like a hand sewn hem on dress pants. So I'll show you how I'll do that. So for my hand sewn hem, I'm just going to fold up 3 centimeters. This seam tape gives me a little bit extra length there, so that's nice. So 3 centimeters or 1.25 inches, that's the hem length that I like. So I'm just going to measure and pin all the way around. I press after I've sewn, but you could certainly press before if you like. For me, the order that works best is measure, pin, sew, press. Sewing gauges just aren't as good as they used to be. This one's an older one, and the red arrow stays put. So that's another thing you could check your thrift store for, is an older sewing gauge. This is an old Singer one, but like it's sort of useless to have that arrow if it just slides around too easily. So I've got a good arm's length of thread, maybe even 1.5 arms lengths, but I only want to work with a single thread. So I'm pulling my thread through the needle and then leaving a long tail, but I only want to work with a single thread. I don't want to have a double thread because we want this as invisible as possible. So I roll that back and forth between my thumb and finger, pull that whole mess down right to the end to get a big fat knot. If there is a little tail of thread after the knot, cut that little tail off. And then I like to start at a seam so I can really just dig right in. I can put a couple stitches right where my seam binding overlaps and then make my way back up to the top. So I hold my thread like this, right? If I just hold the needle and pull, that one thread's going to come out. So I hold it like that. So you're more or less like clamping that thread right in there, but you want to keep that tail of thread about halfway down so that it doesn't get caught in. Okay, so now I'm picking up one thread in the pant, and then I come down just behind the hem tape, or serging, like you can just serge your edge. You don't have to use the hem tape. One thread and then come right behind. So it goes pretty quickly. I don't do a little back stitch, like a back stitch X. I don't find it necessary. This is faster and I like it. The patience comes in just getting that one thread. That's the only moment that takes a little bit of patience. Sometimes it takes a try or two to just get one thread of the fabric on your needle. And then, so the stitches are like, what, about 1/2 inch, 1 centimeter apart, something like that. They're not like teeny tiny right on top of each other, but close enough together that your big toe doesn't get stuck in between 2 stitches. And then the beauty of it is if you've been patient and you've just got that one thread and on the outside you don't see a single thing. I'm looking at this really closely. I cannot see a stitch there, right? That is nice. So on a dress pant, yep, I do prefer a hand sewn hem. And it doesn't take that long and it's quite pleasant. You can sit in front of a movie and you can just pick your way along. But that's where the patience comes in, is just getting that one thread. But it's worth it because then you don't see anything. Okay, so that's for my beginning sewers. People who've been sewing a long time, like as long as I have been or longer, this is old news for you, I'm sure. It's really great for a new sewer to know that you can create a beautiful hem just by hand. Alrighty, so I'm going to finish this off and then take them into my classroom to serge that crotch seam, and then I will be able to show you the finished product. So here we go. I did take this in, I serged that back seam and then brought it in together and serged it together for the rest of the way down. Super easy, super clean and fine. That is good. Let me show you how they turned out. Okay, so the pants are done and they fit so much better now. Raising them up just that little bit, it wasn't much, right? It was about 1 inch that I could raise them, but that just makes it sit at my waist and just feels so much more normal. And then the fact that I was able to add the belt loops, that just opens up the possibility of wearing a cool belt. So I love these pants now. I've got a new outfit to wear to work and I'm feeling pretty good about that. Good, so I think that shows you just like how small little tweaks can really make a difference when you're thrifting thrifting, most of the things you thrift are not going to be perfect. So if you have some sewing skills, you can really make your thrifted purchases work well for you. So I hope you like that. Hope you learned something. And if you did, it's so awesome. If you click like and subscribe, it means so much to me. Thanks so much for being with me to the end. And until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.